So this is a V-brake, and basically to get this off, is to give it a little squeeze, pull on the little metal noodle, and it just pops out. You might have your brake so the cable is so tight that it doesn't come all the way out, in which case you're just going to want to grab a multi-tool, and there's a little bolt here you can loosen that just lets this cable off here, and that'll give you enough slack to get it out, no problem. If you're taking your rear wheel out and you've got a caliper brake, it's just a case of pop this little guy up, loosens your brakes off, and then the tyre should fit through the gap now. I mean, if it is a bit tight, what you can do is you've got a little bolt here, so I'm going to grab an Allen key and just pop it in there. When you loosen that off, this cable will come loose, and then the brakes will open up just even more. So we've got a disc brake here just to show you how to get the rear wheel out. It's actually much easier than you think. One thing you do want to be careful of is if you have been riding your bike and using the brakes, this rotor here could be hot, so watch your fingers there. But other than that, it's just straightforward. When you release the quick release, the rotor is going to drop straight out of the caliper. There's no kind of mechanism that's holding it, so release it like that and straight out. One small point that's worth bearing in mind when you're taking your rear wheel out is it's useful to get your chain down to one of the smaller cogs. So I'm just going to shift it down quickly. Just gets your rear mech up and out of the way and gives you a bit more slack in the chain here to work with. Alright, so we've got our brakes loose. We're just going to drop the wheel out. This is your quick release here. It keeps the wheel in place, and all I'm going to do is put one hand supporting the wheel up at the top. I'm going to loosen that off, this, and then just give the mech a wee push, and then the wheel just drops out, just like that. Just like that. If you don't have a workstand, the luxury of a workstand, which you rarely do at the side of the road, I've released the quick release here. What I'm going to do is just lift up the back end of the bike, and the wheel is going to more or less just drop out itself, like that. You don't want to put it down like this way, because you don't want to bend this little guy here that's bolted on the silver piece. If you can see that, it's the neck hanger. Important not to bend that. So I'm just going to put it down on its side. Like I say, you don't really want to turn your bike upside down because you risk scratching the saddle and all the bits and pieces, your shifters on the bars. So I'm just going to put that down nice and careful. Step over it. Just rest it down, lean it on the side. Okay, I've got my tyre lever here. You'll notice it's got a little hook. I'm going to start off next to a spoke, and you'll see what the little hook does. So I'm going to pop it in just at there's a little lip here. Pop it in over the rim and under the tyre bead, and then this guy hooks on just like that. Leaves your hand free. Grab the other tyre lever. Just work that in next to it, just like that, just gentle, and then start marking your way around the tyre like this. So I've got my tyre off here, but before I take the tube out, one thing I'm going to point out, this is a useful tip, is you want to keep an eye on where your valve is in relation to the logo on the tyre. Just means that once you've got the tube out and you found the hole in the tube, it's just that little bit easier to find the debris in the tyre. Okay, so I've got my flat tube. The first thing I'm going to do is put a little bit of air into it. That's just going to help me to find the puncture. So put a bit of air in and listen for a hissing. So grab my pump here, pop that on the valve, snap that open. Don't need a lot here, really just enough to put some air in so that I can already hear a hissing anyway. And it's just a case of working my way around the tube, giving it a squeeze, listening for the air coming out. Oh, and there it is there. Keep an eye on where your valve hole is, so I'll keep my hand on that just so I don't lose it. Open the tyre out, and here's the valve. So we're kind of about maybe a bit over a quarter of the way around from the valve. So what I'm going to do is grab the tyre and check inside for debris. Like I say, I know where the valve is, so I know where to look for the debris now, which is, like I say, the valve would have been opposite the logo here, so about here. We're looking at about a quarter of the way in. I'm just looking to take out any debris. Perfect. There's my little cut in the tyre. It already is pretty clean. Sometimes this might mean you have to get a bit dirty if you've got use a bit of your jersey or something. So there's the cut, and basically what you want to do is rough up around it with your sandpaper so that the patch sticks nice. So I'm just going to give that a bit of a roughen up. And I'm going to peel the patch off. You don't want to touch the adhesive side too much because it will spoil the adhesive. So I'm just going to peel that off just a little bit. Having a corner there. I've lost it. Here it is again. So here's the little cut, and then all I'm going to do is just pop that on. Be careful, you want to get it nice and right in the middle, nice and even, and then just apply a good bit of pressure to that just to get it sticking down nice. Heating it up will help the adhesive to stick as well. I'm going to make sure there's no bubbles in no kind of place that the air is going to get out there. You see, you've got your patch on the. Perfect. What I'm going to do before I pop the tube back in the bike is just put a little bit of air in it, and that will just help it to sit it in properly. So again, with the pump, I'm going to pop the valve in there, pop that open, and just put a little bit of air in, not a lot, just to give it some shape really, so that it's just a bit easier to sit it inside the tyre. So kind of about that much. So it's still squidgy, but a bit of shape to it. Popping the tube back in. I've rotated it so the valve hole's just under my finger up here. I'm just going to sit it in there more or less. Push the tyre back, pop the valve in, and then it's just a case of feeding the tyre, feeding the tube inside the tyre. And there we go, that's the tube back inside the tyre, just like that, easy peasy. Popping the tyre back on now, I've got the tube in place. I'm going to start at the valve hole, and what I'm going to do is just basically with my hands here, push the bead being the little edge of the tyre here, back over the rim, and then you'll notice it just sort of pops into place. Now, some tyres are tighter than others, and you might get further with just using your hands, depending on how tight or loose the tyre is. But all I'm doing really here is just with one hand making sure it's not popping off, and the other one I'm just working it back on. Just being careful not to trap the inner tube between the tyre and the edge of the rim itself. So working its way around, and what will happen is you'll get to the end. You'll get further with some tyres than others. You get to the end and you'll have one bit that'll be quite tight. So best thing to do is grab your tyre lever here, and then really just want to kind of in reverse. You've got the little lip. Just push it up under the between the rim and the tyre, and then pop it on that way. And there you go. That's your tyre back on. To pop it in is a reverse of taking it out. We're going to push down on the rear mech just to give yourself a bit of slack. Get the chain seated on the cassette, which is this guy here, and then basically what I'm going to do is push the wheel back into the dropout, which is this piece here, this little space where the axle sits. So pop that in there like that, and when it's nice and straight, it's just a case of tightening up the quick release screw on the opposite side, and that's it. Okay, I'm just going to pop the rear wheel back in again. You want it to be nice and accessible, so roll it in there. Just going to hold on to the saddle, just push down on the rear mech to get a bit of space in the chain, and then it should just be a case of once the chain's sitting on it, you just want it to slowly sit it down until it's sitting on the dropout like that, nice and tight. And then you grab the quick release here and tighten that up, and we're good to go. Quick note about tube selection: if you're not repairing your tube, you might be replacing it with a new one, and when you're buying the tubes in the shop, I know the numbers can be quite confusing. So mountain bikes and hybrids specifically, well, the first number here is the diameter of the wheel itself, so 26 inches, and the second number for mountain bikes and hybrids will be in inches as well, so that's 1.5 to 2.2, or 1.5 to 2.2. Important thing to bear in mind here is this big number, you don't want it to be much bigger than the width of your tyre, which will be printed on the tyre wall, because if it is, then you'll get it folding up when you put it inside. You don't want that, it's just going to make the tube rub against itself. Just as a point, some of the other information you're seeing here is it tells you the valve type. So the valve's 32mm long, it's a Presta valve, which is the best way to remember this is Presta is the skinny one that you generally get on road bikes and some hybrids as well. More often you'll get Schrader valves on hybrid bikes, they're the ones like your car tyres, and then you'll also have here we've got, this is 700 here, this is where it gets confusing because it stops being inches and starts being, well, millimetres loosely. So 700, this is for road bikes and larger hybrid bikes. So 700, and then this number here, instead of being in inches, is in millimetres again, so 20 to 28, and again, you just compare this to your tyre, you might have a 700 by 28, and this tube's going to fit fine.